Hi everyone, welcome back to Talk from the Trail Park, and I'm Mrs. V.
Hey, I'm Big B. We're back talking about religion today.
Well, I wouldn't call it a religion. I absolutely wouldn't. We're going to be talking about Church of Religious Science, which I was raised in, so I do know a lot about this so-called religion. It's more of a philosophy than a religion.
And believe me, I got told that it was not Scientology.
It is not. It is not. It is not. My grandfather became a minister in this, a reverend, if you will, in this so-called religion back in 1969. I was 4 years old, and my mother latched onto it. Now, this was created by Dr. Ernest Holmes, who himself was a scientist, he says. I don't know what he ever did with his science degree or what have you. I know my grandfather worked for the government for many, many years as a mathematician and a scientist. But Dr. Ernest Holmes came here from, South Africa. I guess he was a big cricket player over there. And he also, I guess he went back and died there because, there's no trace of him after that, after he went back to South Africa. But anyway, he came up with Church of Religious Science, which, in a nutshell, it's a philosophy that's the power of the mind, Science of Mind, which is also their magazine that they have put out, or a booklet that they used to do every month. And it had ways of what they call treating, which actually is their way of saying praying, but they don't really believe in God. They don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. They actually mock the Bible. I remember growing up, Mom saying that the Book of Psalms was nothing more than erotic love song. And which I think is a bunch of BS.
That sounds like a bunch of BS.
It is. It is. It's crazy. It really is crazy. Now, I remember my grandfather went to the seminary. We lived in New Jersey, and we had to move to California. So where my grandparents went, my mom and dad went. So us three kids went. And it was at the big Founders Church in L.A. And he went there. And I remember when he graduated, there was hundreds and hundreds of people there in the auditorium. And we met Bob Barker. And forgive me because I don't know her name. And it was a lady that played Ellie Mae Clampett. We met her. She was really nice. So was Bob Barker. Although he didn't really have a lot of time for kids.
Well, they're all nice if it's a cult.
It is a cult. It pretty much is. And the thing about religious science is, like I said, it's more of a philosophy and principles and treating, because you're treating the mind and the soul, not the soul, but the mind and the body. You are teaching yourself how to heal your body with just your mind.
So they don't believe in doctors?
They don't believe in doctors. No, they do not. We never went to the doctor. When I was 4 years old, I got my finger caught in the car door and it took the tip of my finger off. It got infected. Although most of the nail was still there. I don't know how that happened. And instead of taking me to the doctor, my mom put a bandage on it. And then, of course, all the blood, you know how it gets up underneath your nail and whatnot. But she had my dad, Eddie, you take care of it. So my dad would sit me down and he took his pocket knife. I'll never forget this. He took his pocket knife and he drilled a hole with his pocket knife into the top of my nail. Mm-hmm. And I was yelling and screaming. Didn't matter. My mom just had to hold me so they could get all the blood out from under my nail. Why they did that, I have no clue. It was just... And that was 1969, almost 1970. So, and my mom was a firm believer in no doctors, except when it came to her.
Yeah.
Now, she didn't believe in dentists either. Now, none of us kids got to go to the dentist. We all, to this day, we all wear dentures, all three of us. But my mom has every tooth in her head. Never had her. Always went to the dentist, got her teeth cleaned, got them fillings if she needed them. But not as kids. Nope. And because she didn't really want to do our vaccinations, but because they wouldn't let us in school if we didn't get them, we got our vaccination, but we got them late. And I remember my brother and sister and I, we all got the measles. And that was huge back then.
Wow.
We didn't get the chickenpox, we got the measles. To this day, I've never had chickenpox. So, and they were not really afraid of the police until the mid-70s. They were a little bit up until the mid-70s. And I can tell you why. Now, in the mid-70s, from 1969 to 1974, old Tricky Dick, as his nickname was Richard Nixon. Of course, we all know he was impeached because of Watergate. And the saying around our house was, oh, everybody did it, he just happened to get caught.
Yes, that's true.
It's just not true.
That's true.
I don't know if it's true or not.
He was an awesome president, though.
Well, because Richard Nixon had several religious science members in the White House, and they were in other parts of the government, they whispered in his ear and said, we shouldn't, faith healers, as they called themselves, or as my grandmother was, a practitioner, should not have to be prosecuted because of their faith. Well, in 1974, they made an amendment to the Child Endangerment Act to where faith healers, people, because of their religion, who didn't believe in doctors, would not be prosecuted for child neglect or the death of their children due to the fact they refused to take them to a doctor. Instead, they would treat over their body. We would say pray, but they would treat. Now, mind you, these are people who really don't believe in God. They don't believe in the Bible. They think it's a joke. And as I said, they don't believe in Jesus Christ. So how can you call it religion if you don't believe in Jesus Christ? In my opinion, because you were raised Pentecostal. So you know what I'm talking about. Anywho, and because Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder, said you can do it with your mind. You don't need doctors.
Yeah.
And if you're sick and you think you're sick, then it's not true. You're not sick. You're just telling yourself you're sick.
You're not concentrating enough.
That's it. You are not treating hard enough. Now, this all actually came from a woman called Mary Baker. I think Eddie or Edie, I'm not sure. They called her the mother of the church. And she was supposed to be, have all these ailments and went to the doctors, and the doctors said, we can't cure you. And the reason they couldn't cure her was the fact that she didn't have
She didn't have none of it.
She was a hypochondriac, and she was just an absolute nut job. Now, I don't understand how this came about because people actually believe this. Now, mind you, Science of Mind was actually created, like I said, by scientists. And my grandfather, being a scientist, jumped into this wholeheartedly, both feet.
See, I would have thought that was Scientology.
No.
Right.
No. Scientology doesn't believe in psychiatrists.
Yeah.
I do believe they believe in doctors, but then again, I don't know, because so many of them have died of cancer.
Yes, I know.
Because they refuse to get treated. But it could be similar. I'm not sure. I don't know that much about Scientology. I just know a lot about religious science. As I said, like growing up in it. Because we moved all over the country. Sorry, guys. We moved all over the country. Grandfather had a church start out in Huntington Park, California. And then we moved to Missouri, and he had a church in Bolivar, Missouri, in the 70s. And then in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, he had a church in Sun City, Arizona. And then in the mid 80s, moved to Fort Smith, Arkansas, where he had a church. But by then, the congregation had dwindled down to nothing. And they closed the church, and he retired. But they never gave any of those ideals up. Like when I was 13, I almost died. I hadn't been for a school nurse, and I want to thank her. If she was I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but you were the school nurse there from I believe it was 1979 to 1983. This happened in 1981, and I had tonsillitis, and my throat was closed together, and I couldn't breathe. But we had to go to school anyway because there's nothing wrong with this thing. Didn't matter what was wrong, how sick you were, you still had to go to school because there's nothing wrong with you. It's on your head.
Yeah.
So the school nurse, I just couldn't take it anymore because we couldn't even have aspirin. We couldn't have aspirin. We couldn't have anything. And she took one look at me and says, how come your mom hasn't taken you to the doctor? And I said, well, I made up an excuse. I said, well, she doesn't have time, whatever. So, and then I went home that day, and then my mom sent me the next day, and my throat was just about closed up, and I was fighting to breathe. And I went back into her office again, and she said, what are you doing here? And I actually told her the truth, and she said, okay. So she loaded me up in her car, and we went to my house, and talked to my mom. She told my mom, if you do not take her to the doctor, and you send her to school again tomorrow, I will be here with the police at your door. That is the only reason I got to go to the doctor. And I guess the school nurse talked to the doctor because she told him, do not give her a prescription. She won't fill it.
Yeah.
If you can, just give her what she needs in antibiotics. And he did. He did. It didn't cost us anything. He just handed it to me. He said, here, I want you to take one of these every I don't know, whatever it is, every 4 hours or twice a day or whatever. And then my mom was furious. Absolutely furious. Because you got to remember, my mom's a narcissist on top of all this.
Oh, yeah, she is, yes.
I mean, an absolute narcissist. Now, back in its heyday, Religious Science had over 100,000 members.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. The death rate of children was unbelievable because Christian Science, Religious Science, Science of Mind, they would not take the children to the doctor. So you'd have a lot of infant deaths. So people had children at home.
It's a miracle they didn't get in trouble for that.
Well, thanks to Nixon, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
The stillborn rate was extremely high. There's a town in Idaho right now that has over 200 infant deaths of children dying. One little girl, she was 2, had a bowel obstruction. All she needed was surgery. Parents said, nope, we're Christian Science. We're going to pray over her. She'll be just fine.
Man.
Within 3 weeks, this little girl was throwing up her own feces. And she ended up dying. Nothing happened to the parents. Because the child endangerment law, they're exempt. Which to me is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's truth. It's absolute truth. And the people that are being hurt by this so-called religion, which I call...
Now, the children.
The children. Well, there's also the elderly. Now, back in the 70s, there was these places that they called care centers.
Well,
run by Scientologists.
The elderly, they brought it on themselves because they were probably Scientology when they were young adults. And they just went along with it, so they probably believe it even more than them.
I don't know about that. I really don't. They did believe, though, because I remember the congregation in my grandfather's church. They all believed.
Yeah.
They all believed that they could heal themselves, and that's why there's nothing wrong with them. But these care centers, and I remember, my grandmother's a practitioner, and I did a lot of studying on this, and it just broke my heart because I just loved my grandparents. I didn't realize the harm they were causing because we didn't see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't see it. You don't know about it. But these care centers, they were run by Scientologists. And, of course, Scientologists don't believe in doctors. And these people would be laying in bed with bed sores, or maybe they had amputations for some reason that they... but they had these practitioners, and I can attest that my grandmother didn't either. They had no medical training whatsoever. None. But yet they would be the ones in there calling the shots for these patients. And the sad thing about it was Medicare was paying for it.
Yeah.
Medicare was paying for it. There is a writer, and I believe, let me see if I can find this here. She writes for The Guardian. Now, her father was a Christian Scientist, and her father was in his 70s, and they kind of had a strained relationship anyway. Her brother, her sister, and her dad. Her dad lived alone, and somehow he'd hurt his foot. 3 of his toes were hurting. And evidently, he would limp, and then about a couple weeks later, he was having music cane, and then I believe in like another week and a half, 2 weeks later, he was using a walker. Excuse me. And so she went to him, and they all went to him and said, look, Dad, please let us just take you to the emergency room. Let's just hear what they have to say. They don't have to touch you. You don't have to accept any kind of help from them or anything. And so they took him into the emergency room. The doctor saw him. It turns out he has gangrene in 3 of his toes. And the doctor said, look, we need to remove those toes or you're going to end up losing your whole foot. And the man looked at me and said, nope, I don't believe in that. My religion, I do not believe in doctors. Take me home. Let me out of here. I'm going home. And so the kids did what they could. They took him home. And they didn't want to try to force him because they knew that if they did, he would not have anything else to do with them. And they loved their dad. They just wanted, wanted to be there for him. Well, then a nurse practitioner came in and was taking care of him, would clean it, bandage it back up. The kids went to see him, I think it was like maybe 2.5, 3 weeks later, and it turns out that the gangrene had gotten so bad, the heel of his foot literally fell off. And this practitioner, they asked her, he needs to go to the doctor. We got to go to the hospital. She said, nope. That's not what we believe. I've been treating for him. We have other people treating for him. He has to believe it. And if he's not going to believe in it, then this is what happens. This is his fault.
Mm-hmm.
This happened to him. This is his fault.
So where do they go if they pass away?
Well, then they go wherever their family or maybe they have some funeral home.
They stay in the dirt.
Yeah, they I don't know. They can. I don't know if anybody's ever been cremated. I don't know. They don't have a choice. They're already gone. And you got to remember, religious science doesn't believe they die. They do not believe they die. They believe their energy is all part of one collective consciousness, and in energy, you can't get rid of energy. It just changes into something else. And there is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no devil, there's no Jesus. You just go to another world.
The UFO takes you to another world.
Yeah, I don't know about the UFO part, but you just go to another world, if you can believe that. And I know so many horror stories of children, like my sister, when she had a blister. There's a plant in our backyard that's in California. She was allergic to. She had a big old blister, and it got infected. And she had a red streak going up her arm. And we all know when you get that red streak up your arm, you get to the doctor, because that's like a poison going up. And if it hits your heart, you're in love trouble. It hits your bloodstream.
Yes.
So, and of course they wouldn't take her to the doctor. So what my grandmother did was she got Epsom salts and boiling water and made my sister soak her hand in that for like 3 days straight. And we just change the water. And finally it did. It drew it out. But it took 3 days. But it was scary, because it got almost to her shoulder.
Oh, wow.
And they still wouldn't have sent her to the doctor. Still wouldn't. Due to the fact that they don't believe in doctors.
Yeah.
No. I don't care if you got a toothache from hell. They're not going to the dentist. But see, that's where my mom was a little different, because when it came to her, she went to the dentist. She went to the doctor.
And you're talking hypocrite.
She didn't tell anybody. We were told not to tell my grandfather. You tell Papa I went to the doctor, it'll be the end of you. So, yeah. Yeah. And my brother dared ask her, well, how come we don't get to go? She beat him with a belt.
Oh, yeah.
You don't question me. You don't question anything I do. Yeah, it was crazy. Our household was chaos. Just pure chaos. But that's a video for another day.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put all the links in the bottom in the description so y'all can see that I know that I've done my research on some of the other things. I just know what we've experienced. I know that when my grandmother passed away, my grandmother had a bowel problem, and they removed her colon, and she had a colostomy bag. She had a colostomy bag for years. That happened in, like, I think 1971, 72, and up until into the, mid-90s is when my grandmother passed away. She was in her 80s. And she would go in the bathroom every morning and do what she had to do to, I guess, change her bag and whatnot, because it is a colostomy bag.
Yes.
And then she started feeling funny. She started feeling bad. And my grandpa would say, it's in your head. So I told her, it's in your head. It's in your head. You just have to treat harder. Being a practitioner, you know that. And my grandmother, of course. But then she thought she was going crazy. Either that, or she just wasn't treating hard enough.
Hmm.
Well, finally, my dad had enough. My dad adored my grandmother and wouldn't let anything happen to her. He didn't care. Normally, my mom ruled the roost. She told my dad when to eat, when to sleep,
Yeah.
that he had to go to work, sick or not, he had to go. Didn't matter. He worked every day. She ruled his life completely. The man, she didn't work, but he did. And he would have to beg for $2 or $3 for lunch money so he could eat lunch. Or maybe he needed gas, and she wanted to know exactly how many gallons he was putting in the car. Because she controlled it. But she could spend it any way she wanted. She bought herself all kinds of material to make herself clothes, a $5,000 sewing machine, but Dad had to beg for $2 or $3 for lunch money. But in her mind, because, being a narcissist, that's just the way things are. But he defied her and took my grandmother to the doctor. They admitted her to the hospital right away, and my mom and grandfather were fuming. They were mad. But they did surgery on her, and during the surgery, her heart stopped, and she passed away. To this day, they blame my dad for my grandmother's death. Because they said if he hadn't taken her to the hospital, that her treating would have worked and she'd have been fine. Yep. Which is ludicrous. It's absolutely, really, the science is BS, and I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you give me all kinds of comments, because there's so many times that children have died and elderly have died because they couldn't get doctor's care. I think they figure it out too late.
Yeah.
They figure it out too late. It's too late to get to the doctor, because by the time they get there and realize, I should have went a long time ago, it's over. It's absolutely over. What do you think of the religion I was raised in? And I do know a lot because I was raised in it.
It's a crazy religion. Right.
It's not a religion.
Or
it's a cult.
Crazy cult.
It is a cult. I don't know how we survived. My brother used to get these big boils on the back of his on his spine when we were teenagers, and he was in junior high, and these boils were as big as, they were like that big on his back. They were huge. And you know what my mom and them did about it? Didn't take him to the doctor. My dad would take his trusty pocket knife, cut off the top of it, and my brother, it's painful, and take a piece of string. He would tie a loop on a piece of string and then drag that string to the center of it, trying to get the core out. So he'll let that, and I got him too, and so did my sister. But we never figured out why. There had to be something, that we were either allergic to, or something that we were being fed, and because we were fed some crazy stuff, some crazy food, because Mom couldn't cook.
Well, probably the dandelions you ate.
Yeah, we did have 2 dandelion greens. We ate those a lot. My mom loved them, and she would go out in the backyard and pick them, and rinse them off, and cook them, and we had to eat them.
Well, no, ain't no way.
Oh yeah, this is crazy. But that's for another video.
Yeah.
But like I said, by its peak, religious science had 100,000 members across the world. It was really big in UK, and I believe it was big in Switzerland. But slowly, now they don't even have, I think, 20,000 members. Because the new thought, and people have learned that if you're sick, you need to go to the doctor.
Yeah, you got to go to the doctor.
I mean, we know, because that when I was young, I have these, my heart would beat funny, and then I would lose my breath and try to pass out. And that's happened since I was a kid. And now, because of that, I have a pacemaker with a defibrillator. Because my heart is out of sync. I was born with it. I was born with the ailment that I have, and they'd never take me to the doctor and tell me I was crazy. I was fine. Go do what you got to do. And get away from me. Because that's the day, of course, kids have to play outside. They've been hanging out, playing games inside. There weren't any games. It was Pong. We never got to play it. Dad always had it. But it's one of those things that I think that needs to be abolished. And if there was one, there is a church, actually, even though they changed their name. In 2010, they said they were going to what was it? Be more, have more affiliation with the medical industry. Now I don't know what the hell that's supposed to mean.
Oh, that's why they had to change their name.
Well, they changed their name because they knew that religious science of mind, was hokey.
Yeah.
You know, or it was perceived as crazy, as people thinking it's a cult, as people that finally started listening probably to their grown children who didn't want anything to do with it. You know, like us three, we don't have anything to do with the church. We didn't want anything to do with the church. You know, because it was just you couldn't believe in it, because we were going to take our kids to my sister and I. We took our kids to the doctor. And they didn't go to the doctors because it was either they got better, or a lot of my sister's case didn't have the money to go because she didn't qualify for Medicaid because she had a job. Because back then, you know, you had a job, you really didn't. You had to rely on your job to give you medical, and even then it was expensive, and it wasn't worth it.
Yeah,
You couldn't afford it. Anyway, they changed their names to Centers for Spiritual Healing, is what their name is now. But having problems there, Big Harvey?
Yeah. I'm back.
Oh, we can laugh now, but back then our life was just living hell. Absolute living hell. You didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about it to other people. That is something that you are taught. You do not tell people what is going on in your household. Ever. You do not invite people over.
No, people didn't come inside. Your friends didn't come in.
Nope. If they came over, they stayed outside on the porch.
Yeah.
But after that incident with the school nurse, it was even harder on us, because we were told, anything like that ever happens again, you better just die in your sleep. Because that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You better hope that's what happens. Because if you tell, you're not going to live this. You're not going to live through it.
No, I had a crazy life.
It was
crazy childhood.
Yes,
but your life's a lot better now.
Oh well, once I learned, you know, I got around my dad's family, who's Pentecostal, and they had a lot. They knew my mom, of course. You know, they were sister-in-law for 50 years, but they knew how she was and what they thought, how they believed. Yeah. And I have an uncle who just would put my mom through the roof, being Pentecostal and extremely religious, and would argue with her, and she actually couldn't keep up with his arguments. She couldn't answer him. She didn't have a good answer for anything.
Yeah.
But she would laugh in his face. How can you believe in that Bible? She says. It's just a book. It doesn't mean anything. And there is no Jesus. There is no Jesus Christ. He's not the Son of God. There may have been Jesus, but he wasn't the Son of God. And how can you believe in Psalms? Psalms is nothing but erotic love songs. So what in the world? How can you believe in that? And there is no such thing as miracles. Miracles are something that is manifested in our brain. Anyway, I was going to bring up, let me show you who Dr. Holmes is. Hang on, take me a second. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on here. My stuff's acting like it's crazy. I know what's going on. Make it some better. Oh,
can you get it? There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just... Now, this is a picture that was in our house, in our living room. It was in my grandparents' house in their living room. This is Dr. Holmes, Ernest Holmes, the founder of the religion. And my grandfather had a huge portrait of him in his office at the church. Now, let me show, this is another one here. This also was another one that was in the church and in my grandfather's home. I just wanted to show you who Mary Baker Eddy is, and you can actually... Now, this is the woman that was crazy. I mean, she was a hypochondriac. How did she get people to listen to her? My understanding is she was not that charming. She was neurotic. She was, like I said, a hypochondriac. Thought she had all these elements and didn't. But somehow, and then Dr. Holmes comes along and makes a religion out of it.
Yeah.
That kind of, to me, that reminds me of Scientology because L. Ron Hubbard wrote the book. I remember the book being advertised on TV, about his Scientology. And he was also I believe, psychologist, or I don't know if he's psychiatrist, psychologist, and wrote a paper and they mocked him, and dude, you don't even know what you're talking about, because he was also a science fiction writer. So there's a lot of that for you.
Star Trek.
Xenu. Yeah. Right. But anywho, that is where all that's coming from as far as Scientology goes. And I don't think Church of Religious Science is too far off from that.
Yeah.
It really isn't. But the thing about religious science is they're not as cult-like as Scientology, because they do not try to keep a heavy hand on their members. They do not tell them where they can work or what they can do, and they don't do that. They absolutely don't do that. They will scorn you if they think you're going to a doctor, or if you're taking any kind of vitamins, or if you're taking any kind of aspirin. I don't care if you got a headache, you just got to deal with it. You have to will yourself to get rid of that headache, because you're not supposed to be taking anything. It doesn't matter what it is. And see, that's where my grandfather was. He was just a little different in that way, because he took vitamins. They took fish oil every day. They took all his vitamins. I remember taking bone meal and bruised yeast and vitamin E and vitamin C and vitamin D. And we had to take all that too growing up. So, I don't know. Maybe his belief was slightly off from that, because he was really big on nutrition. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Absolute nutrition. I did want to hit on this one thing here. At this town in Idaho, I believe it's Idaho, that they do Christian Science. They have over 200 childhood deaths.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah, and this is that town in Idaho, and they are exempt because they're considered faith healers. Now, they have stillbirth after stillbirth after stillbirth. And this is from the Investigate West show. And because of Idaho's religious exemption for so-called faith healers, thank you, thank you, Church of Religious Science, really appreciate that. They're not getting, it's perfectly legal to let your kid die.
Man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The medical neglect is part of an education bill, is what they hid it in 1969. And then in 1997, the state expanded the exemption so that the parents using Christian Science treatments can be criminally prosecuted for withholding medical care. See, the exemption from criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but unbelievable. Those 200 children that died, they were all preventable.
Oh, yeah.
They were preventable. That's 200 babies that need not need to die. I mean, I'm talking even diabetics. Like the little boy was, I think he was 11, and his mom and dad got divorced. Mom became a non-believer. Dad stayed in it, and she remarried. So dad wound up with custody, because I don't know who she married. I don't know what the thing was there. Dad got him, took away his insulin. Then you have to treat hard enough, not pray, treat. To me, it's not a religion anyway, because if you don't believe in Jesus Christ, then it's not a religion. It's absolutely, I don't care who you are. It's not a religion. It's a cult. It's a cult. It's a bunch of scientists. It's their way of thinking of what happens to you when you pass away. It's their way of thinking that because of science, you can heal yourself. Well, science is what doctors do. It's science. It's medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't want to weigh in. I know I've been
Rambling on.
I have. It just makes me angry. It just makes me so angry because it's so preventable. So preventable.
But you lived through it, so you know it.
I did live through it. It was horrendous. Outside. What got me was the care facilities and all these poor elderly people who couldn't even get a doctor. They had their practitioners, which my grandmother was, and she would get those phone calls. You know, I have to treat for this person. I have to treat for this person. And it wasn't pray, it was treat. Because because God doesn't have anything to do with it. Really, they didn't believe in God. I don't care what they say. They were atheists, pretty much. They used the name God, I think, to appease the fact that they were a non-profit religion.
Yeah.
Tax exempt kind of thing. You don't hear them ever say, when you pray to God, to help you. No. It's, you need to treat so your mind can heal your body. That's pretty much that. Christian Scientists avoid doctors because they perceive illness as a spiritual error, and they prioritize prayer and spiritual understanding for healing. Now, it's not prayer; it's treatment. Let's not get messed up. Just remember, because you're trying to treat your body through your mind. It's a cult.
Yes, it is. All right, people. I guess we're done.
Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I know I probably will. I learn something every day.
I know I did.
But please leave a comment, like our video, and I would love to hear from you. Maybe you have your own stories of this crazy cult-like philosophy. I'm not going to call it religion. And please leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I always answer all the comments that come through with our videos.
Good or bad.
Good or bad. That's right. That's right. Everybody has their own opinion. And everybody has that right to that opinion. And I'm a firm believer in that, so nobody's wrong.
They're like a-holes. Everybody has one.
I can't believe so. Anyway, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Okay.